Is the SEC the best conference in college football? We're going to talk about that and more on today's show. Roll the intro. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're listening or watching in from. This is the Cardinal Companion coming in to you on the YouTube page, talking a little bit of SEC today, baby. I got my boy Brad with me. Brad, how you doing tonight?
I'm ready for football. We hit the 60-day mark for Louisville today, so we're about 50 days away if you count week 0, which means we're less than 2 months, and I'm more ready than ever.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, Brad, I have something I have to tell you before we get going with this. So,
Go for it.
if you're not a a longtime subscriber or someone that takes in a lot of our content, we do weekly shows during the season, sometimes 2-3 shows a week. We do weekly off-season shows as well, and we obviously we mainly cover the University of Louisville. I would say that's fair to say. But myself and Brad on our platform, we've been accused by U of L fans of being SEC homers. Did you know that, Brad?
I mean, I can't help I was born and raised in it. I mean, it's not my fault. I mean,
Well, you know what I tell those people, man? I say, I'm a Louisville fan, but you're absolutely right. I'm like,
yeah.
it's just, it's the best brand of college football there is. It's been the best brand of college football for 2/3 of our life.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's pretty much since the Urban Meyer days at Florida, that kind of kick-started everything for the SEC.
Yeah,
I mean, that 06, 07 time frame
yeah.
is when it just hit a whole nother level, and it hasn't been any other way since.
Yeah, and the SEC's kind of it's been a weird league. I'd say the past 2 seasons. You've had Big Ten national championships back to back. The Big Ten has a better bowl record against the SEC right now, and a better head to head over the past 5 years. And then obviously, the big thing in the SEC is with Nick Saban walking away, it changes the conference completely. And Nick Saban, he's been a staple of this conference even before he was at Alabama. We always forget the guy won national championships at LSU, Baton Rouge. He's been dominating the conference since, probably 2000, I think 2003, 2002, somewhere around that
Yeah,
time
he
frame.
won. He won a title at LSU in '03, and yeah, I mean, of course, he went to the NFL, and it wasn't long. He was right back in the league.
Yeah. And, so the one thing I will say, the league it's in a very weird spot this season, I would say. I think there are some clear better teams in the conference. But something you and I were talking about offline a couple of days ago. If you look at the SEC, it is not the SEC of 10 years ago anymore. There are the same number of blue chips in the conference, but if you look at the individual teams, the aggregate blue chip rating for each team is actually lower. What you're seeing more of that top level talent funnel to your LSU's, Texas's, Georgia's, Alabama's, and less so your South Carolinas, Oklahoma's, Ole Miss's, XYZ. But even with that being said, though, and Bill Connolly, he has admitted this himself. The blue chip rating is not the most of accurate things to go by anymore, especially with the transfer portal, because we see it every single year. We see a unranked or a low 3-star from a G5 transfer up, and they are a national player after that. So it's just BCR is one of those weird things. I don't put a lot of stock into it, but there's an interesting tale being told here in the SEC.
Absolutely. I mean, on the reverse too, you'll have 4 or 5 star level transfer from the Big 12 ACC come in, and they don't perform at the same level. So it
It,
goes both ways.
it
I
does.
mean, Kelly Ford uses analytics to monitor those things, and he says it himself. If a kid comes up from a MAC or a Sun Belt, he's not going to have that higher rating until he has data to prove it. Same for going down a level. It's just the nature of the beast and recruiting these days.
Yeah. But kind of getting into it, because we've kind of bullcrapped our way through this enough. Let's start actually talking about this season. The first thing I kind of want to hit on here, we'll just go straight into it. We got some big games to watch this year. So for the viewers at home, me and Brad, we have two separate lists. We're kind of compiled our own things, and we're going to talk about it, bring it together, have a nice little beautiful product for it. So yeah, we have a few games to watch here that we're going to go through. The first one I have Texas at Ohio State on August 30th. That's going to be a big noon kickoff, and it feels like the biggest regular season game since Texas at Alabama.
Yeah, I mean you couldn't ask for a college football fan. You couldn't ask for a better matchup because obviously the reigning national champions worse. What most people are going to tell you is the best roster in the SEC in Texas. So you've got big on big week 1, and I can't wait. I mean, I'm actually glad this is a noon game because all eyes are going to be on this game at noon.
Yeah, and one would think, and smart money says that this will not be the only time you see this game this season.
Could be. Yeah, I mean, and I'm on myself. I'm actually pretty high on Texas, solely because of the talent they brought back and in on the defensive side of the ball. Look at, Kelly Ford mentions it in his preseason analytics. Their defense has the capability to be one of the best we've seen in a while. And you look at their schedule, at least within the SEC. They play some of the bottom offenses in the conference. And so with the talent they brought in, you're looking at a unit that could be really, really good. And this will be that first big test for Texas to start the season.
Yeah, and then 3 hours after that, you have LSU at Clemson on the same day on August 30th. About 3 hours later, I think it's a 3:30 kickoff for that one.
That's actually the night kick.
Okay, so that's okay. Cool.
Yeah. But for me, one of my games, it is another early non-conference game. Usually this time of year you start to hear a lot of buzz about Auburn, and for me, this is a go prove it year for Hugh Freeze. He has the talent; they should be good, and they open up with Baylor on Friday night, August 29th. And if Auburn's going to be anything more than what we saw last year, they have to go out and prove it against Baylor.
Yeah, we had a video posted about 2 days ago talking about the Big 12. Baylor is not a team to sleep on.
No,
they're not. And with Auburn, you cannot have a repeat of the California game last year.
No,
you just cannot.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is Jackson Arnold good enough to lead that offense? I don't know. I didn't see it at Oklahoma. I didn't get all the hype around Jackson Arnold. I just didn't. But I think Auburn does have enough weapons around him. Obviously, Hugh Freeze, offensive genius in his own ways. So for me, when I look at this conference, that's a game that if you're the SEC and you want to stand on your staple of being the best league, you got to go prove it. And that's a game where I look at if you don't beat Baylor, how good is this league going to be from top to bottom?
Yeah. And then just going kind of in season here, September 27th, you have traditional SEC powers, Alabama at Georgia. And I mean, it's one of those games that's going to dictate who's in Atlanta at the end of the season. It's just one of those games, man.
And you look at Georgia. So they have both Tennessee and Alabama in September. We're going to know a lot about Gunnar Stockton before we even get to October. I mean, and that's the biggest question mark for me with Georgia. Can Gunnar Stockton be good enough to lead them back to Atlanta? And is he good enough to win a playoff game? They have the roster to be the best team in the country. We know that. But the quarterback position, to me, for Georgia is the biggest question mark. It was a small sample size last year, but I didn't see much out of Gunnar Stockton to tell me that he can lead that team to an SEC championship.
Yeah, we'll get more into it with a Georgia talk because that is a very specific situation in itself. But I completely agree with you. I mean, it's just it all comes down. It just the quarterback play has to be there because everything else is there on the roster. It's just it comes down to quarterback play.
Yeah.
But and then going right into it, October 11th, Tennessee at Alabama. That's another one of those games where that will depend who is in Atlanta. All these games are because realistically, the way I got a few more games to watch, and it's a recurring theme. It's going to be one of 5 schools because let's just be very honest with ourselves. There's only about 5 or 6 rosters that can win the SEC this year. Just being very realistic.
But one of my big games, also to watch, and it's a team that I think is going to sneak up on people, as crazy as it sounds. But I look at Ole Miss, man. Like, they'll have their September cakewalk as they usually do. But for example, they do have an opportunity to uh, kind of pad their SEC record just early in the year, and I say that because obviously they have Kentucky the second week of the year, so they're gonna get off to a 1-0 start in conference play, but that's a team, man, that I look at. They have an opportunity. They get LSU at home also on 7th. I think you just mentioned that, and if Ole Miss can beat LSU at home, I really do think that they're going to have an opportunity to shock some people. And I say that solely because they're going to have a new starting quarterback and a lot of question marks on the offense. And, that's just one of those teams that Lane Kiffin has done a great job putting together a roster every year. And the one year that people may be sleeping on them, this could be the year where they kind of break through.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And then just my last little two, and we won't talk about these super in depth because this will be part of a larger conversation. Texas at Georgia on November 15th. One would think that might not be the only time these two teams play each other. And then Tennessee at Florida on the 22nd. Do not sleep on Florida this year.
And I like to reference Kelly Ford here, but this is going to be one of those games where if you look at the analytics with Florida, they could realistically have a shot if the analytics go their way to clinch a spot in Atlanta against Tennessee on November 22nd. Like, the analytics love Florida, and for me personally, this is a go prove it year for Billy Napier. I'll say that about several coaches in the SEC this year, but especially Billy Napier. He's got arguably one of the best returning quarterbacks in the conference, and I don't think that's
In the country.
yeah,
Yeah.
in the country as well. I mean,
Yeah.
DJ Lagway is a good quarterback, and he's put together, several good recruiting classes in a row. And, historically, Florida, at least in our lifetime, has owned that game to begin with. And, depending on what happens with Tennessee's quarterback position, this could be one of those games where both teams are coming in 8-1, 7-2, somewhere in there. I mean, I love this game being in November. Usually this game is in September, except for 2001. It was in November, and the winner of the game got a chance. That was essentially the SEC East championship game, and the winner got to go to Atlanta. I love this game being in November. I think it's going to be one of the most watched games in the SEC this year. Is Tennessee at Florida in November?
Yeah, and just kind of something you brought in, and I'm going to go ahead and transition this topic a little bit. Three things to watch in the SEC this year, and you already hit on one of mine. The coaching situation for almost half of the league is so fascinating because you look at it. I mean, just going down the list, you have interesting situation in Kentucky, an interesting situation in Mississippi State, interesting situation in Arkansas, interesting situation in Auburn, interesting situation at Ole Miss, interesting situation at Oklahoma. I mean, it just keeps going on, and even LSU to an extent.
To an extent, correct.
Yeah, to an extent. But I mean, you look at it, and it's a recurring thing with a lot of these SEC programs. Whereas, if the booster buy-in is there, then expectations automatically have to go up a little bit. And that's what we're seeing in a lot of these programs. Like, do I think that, Brian Kelly realistically is on the hot seat? No. But has Brian Kelly underachieved the last 2 years?
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, you spend $15 million on a roster, you should be in the college football playoff, and that hasn't happened. But it's just such a fascinating situation. And I will say, I do genuinely think after this offseason, there's probably about 3 openings in the SEC.
Agree. I mean, and you could honestly throw Hugh Freeze in this scenario, same as Brian Kelly. Like, if things go south, they have money and they're not afraid to go another direction. And I'm glad you brought up Brian Kelly, because that's my biggest question mark about the SEC and LSU in general this year is if they go 9-3 or 8-4, miss the playoff, what do they do? Because this is Brian Kelly's best roster at LSU. This is his best defense at LSU. He's got a senior quarterback. Like, you can't ask for better tools in your tool chest here. Like, you have to go prove it. And if they go to Clemson week 1 and do not come out of there with a win, it is going to be absolute chaos in Baton Rouge early this year.
And that actually, it's funny. That transitions me to my second thing to watch, and that is watch how the SEC does in the early out of conference slate, because it is a difficult slate out of conference. And there's been a lot of question marks, especially in the media over the past 6 months about the SEC after the college football playoff performance. If a team like LSU can't beat Clemson and Death Valley, and then you do have like an Auburn situation like we talked about with the Baylor, I mean, there's probably going to be about 8 preseason top 25 SEC teams. That number's going to go down drastically overnight. The league's going to have zero respect going into league play. And I know that sounds insane to say because everyone thinks, oh, ESPN, they own college football, blah, 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 blah. But that is what will happen, at least in the AP poll.
Absolutely. I mean, they're going to get their love early. But even, another game real quick that the SEC has to take advantage of, and it's the team we talked about in Florida. They have to beat Miami. I mean,
yes. Yes.
Because if they don't, Billy's seat is going to be scorching hot going into October.
And that's another program I didn't even mention with the coaching uncertainties. But I mean, and then, my last little thing, and then I'm going to push it over to you, is Arch Madness real? Is Arch Manning the real? Because I got a cover of Athlon right here. Arch Manning. I mean, is it the real deal? That's what I'm just so interested to see that entire situation, because one would think you just go, oh, okay, cool. Well, he has Wingo, DeAndre Moore. He has all these targets. He really doesn't. There's only about 2 or 3 proven targets at Texas.
Yeah, and Arch is the young quarterback everybody's talking about. But for me, and it's one of my hot takes here, Austin Simmons at Ole Miss is going to lead the league in passing yards. He is. I think this kid is a sleeping star, and the college football world is going to quickly realize how good he is. We saw him in limited time last year against Georgia when Jackson Dart went down. They did not skip a beat. Some would say they even moved the ball a little bit better with Austin Simmons. He is a left-handed quarterback. We don't see that very often anymore. But I think he fits Lane Kiffin's scheme to perfection. He's a little bit, of a bigger quarterback than Jackson Dart was. He is extremely athletic, but he has an absolute rocket of an arm. Ole Miss did lose a lot of wide receivers from last year out of the passing game, but it is Lane Kiffin. They're going to be fine. It's going to be more of a plug and play, especially at the quarterback position. Again, I think so many people are talking about Arch Manning that they are overlooking Austin Simmons. And come November, he will be a household name in college football. Like, write it down. Hot take. I don't care. He will be a household name in college football.
So, Brad, go ahead. Give me your 3 things to watch as well.
So the next thing that I have, and it goes to Knoxville, Tennessee. Josh Heupel has a chance to make a lot of money this year, and I'll say that because if he can bring Joey Aguilar into that offense and they do not skip a beat, say they go 9-3, even if they go 10-2 again with Joey Aguilar, give that man whatever he wants financially, because he will prove himself once again. I think Tennessee's defense is going to be very, very good. But for me, the question mark with them is Joey Aguilar. And if he can come in and produce at an SEC level, they're going to be back in the college football playoff. Their schedule is very, very manageable. It is very manageable.
So today is June 30th. Just want to point this out before I add to this. Have you heard the latest rumor today about Tennessee's quarterback situation?
I have not.
They might be going after someone in the transfer portal who entered.
And it'll only make them better.
It would. I'm not, it's all rumor. Nothing is official. There are multiple schools reaching out to said individual due to personal reasons. Joey Aguilar, we're talking about a less than 10% chance here. But there could be a different quarterback there. And if that's the case, I rank Tennessee a little low. They're bumping up a lot of spots if he goes there.
Exactly. And, a lot of the analytics that you look at as of June 30th, even with Joey Aguilar, have Tennessee at a 9-3. Some analytics have them going 10-2 with Joey Aguilar. Like, similar to Georgia in some ways. They've got a good roster, especially defensively, but it all kind of the big question mark is the quarterback. Josh Heupel offense will always put up points, but in the big games, like at home against Georgia and on the road at Alabama, and of course in the swamp in November, those are the three games. And if Joey Aguilar can at least win one of those, if he can go out with his arm and win you one of those games, and you don't have a slip up like you did against Arkansas, they're going to be right back in that same position
Yeah,
as they
I
were
mean,
last
yeah,
year.
they are in the position to compete.
And no one looked at that offense last year with Nico and was terrified, but they had a good defense, a good running game, and Nico provided enough. And if Joey can do a similar thing, they're going to be right back in that same spot. Um, and the third thing that I want to hit on is 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 another team that was right on the cusp of the college football playoff last year, and it was South Carolina. They had a great defense, great young quarterback, and a really good running game last year. This year, I look at that roster. The defense is still going to be good. They're not going to be as dominant as they were last year, but Dylan Stewart, one of the best ends in college football. You know, it,
I got notes here for Dylan Stewart. You want to know what I wrote down?
Go for it.
If you could make a defensive end in a lab and grow him, it would be Dylan Stewart.
He
He's
is,
the perfect D end.
yeah, and he is probably one of the most talked about ends since Clowney, at least in the SEC. I mean, it's teams will have to scheme around him all year. And, that's the big thing. One of my big question marks with them is last year they had Kyle Kennard on the other side. This year there is no Kyle Kennard that's proven yet. So who's going to be that other guy? And also with South Carolina, as crazy as it sounds. So when you think of Shane Beamer, you think of special teams, obviously, and they've been pretty good in that department at South Carolina. However, brand new special teams coordinator, brand new kicker, brand new punter. The last couple of years, South Carolina special teams was able to win them a couple games, and if if that unit this year is not good, I could very easily see South Carolina going 7-5. It's just
It
it's
is.
crazy to
Yeah.
sound, but that could be a difference in winning 7 games or 9 games, and
Yeah,
it costs
yeah. That is
special
what special
teams.
teams does to good football teams.
Yeah, special teams last year, it didn't cost them the Alabama and the LSU game, but they did have 2 field goal opportunities to win both of those games, and they missed them. So, I mean, that's the difference of 9-3 and 11-1 right there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's that simple. I mean, Lenore Sellers is a great quarterback. They do need to improve in the passing game a little bit. And if they do, I think he can cover up some more deficiencies the roster may have. Um, and then another team that I look at, that's kind of in that middle of the pack in some ways that could make some noise, or come November we could just be looking at them like time to bring in a new coach and start this thing all over. And I shouldn't say bring in a new coach, that was the wrong statement, but how will people view Eli Drinkwitz this year? Because you look at that schedule, you
That's a
know
whole conversation.
they so they don't leave. They don't have an away game, a true away game, until I believe week 8, and that's a team that could very easily start 5-0, and then things get really difficult in a hurry for Missouri. And I know you and I had talked about this. This is another team, and shocker, it all comes down to the quarterback. They've got a pretty good roster. Eli's done a great job at Missouri. But and I'll mess up his last name. I'm gonna mess up his last name. But Bo transferred
Prebula.
from
Prebula.
Prebula.
Bo
Bo
Prebula.
Prebula, transfer quarterback
Yep.
from Penn State. If he can come in and be anywhere near what Connor Cook was, that's another team that could be right there at 9-3, 10-2 on the cusp of the playoff, because they have a favorable schedule also. If they can get to 5-0, I believe Alabama's their 6th game, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah,
at
so I
home.
got I got it here in front of me. They week 1 Central Arkansas, week 2 Kansas, week 3 Louisiana, Week 4, South Carolina. Week 5, UMass. Week
At
6,
That's actually at UMass.
is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Then they host Alabama, at Auburn, at Vanderbilt, host Texas A&M, host Mississippi State, at Oklahoma, and at Arkansas to finish the season.
So that's another team. Like they've been right there the last couple years on that playoff bubble, and if they can figure out the quarterback spot, I think defensively they're going to take a step back from where they have been. But offensively, if the quarterback position is good enough, I think that's going to be, like for example, like the South Carolina game early in the year. That's a game where they're probably going to be 2.5, 3 point favorite somewhere in that margin. You know, if Bo can outplay the North Sellers, that's a game they can win. That's a game they can steal at home, which a lot of people may look at now and say South Carolina should win that game. South Carolina historically has not played well at Missouri, and that's a prime opportunity for Missouri to steal a game at home in the SEC. And it all comes down to that Bama game. I mean, if they're 4 or 5-0 going into that Bama game at home, they'll have a chance to make a huge statement.
All right, let's do it. All right, so Brad, we got our rankings pulled up here. A little janky setup, so I apologize for the viewers at home. But obviously, I'm on the left, Brad's on the right. We're going to work our way down at the bottom and then work our way up, talking about each one of these teams while we have them ranked where they're ranked. Fair warning, we're not going to spend a lot of time on the bottom teams. There's just only so much you can say. But our first team at 16, which both me and Brad are in agreement on, are your Kentucky Wildcats. Fair warning. Yes, this is a U of L page. We are trying to be as unbiased as possible. This is not rivalry talking here. For me, man, I genuinely think Kentucky is one of the worst teams in Power 4 football this year.
There's just nothing you look at with that roster and think they can go, win 6 games. I don't see it. They defensively last year they were in the top 40 and they still only won 4 games. I don't see enough improvement on either side of the ball to get past that mark.
I don't. And what scares me the most is a 25-year-old Zach Calzada is not your answer in the SEC.
It's
I mean,
not.
it's not. It's very poor roster management and construction from Stoops. I don't exactly know what he was thinking, who he was listening to. There is one roster spot I really like they picked up in the portal. They picked up Troy Stellato. The only issue with Troy Stellato is, and Clemson fans will tell me this because Louisville was in the running for Troy Stellato. I talked to his agent. I mean, I knew quite a bit about the kid. He was a wide receiver 4 at Clemson. Every major school looking at him was looking at him from a wide receiver 4 position. Kentucky's going to try to make him a wide receiver 2. That should tell you everything you need to know about their roster and the state of it.
Yeah, I mean, I like Kendrick Law. I think he provides some spark from Alabama. Their running back room could be a little bit better, more talented, but again, there's nothing that really sticks out. The offensive line has to be better. I don't see any way it's going to be much better. Quarterback, again, it's just you brought in a guy who was okay at Texas A&M, was pretty good on the FCS level. That's not going to win you many games in the SEC.
It's not. What worries me the most about Kentucky football is you've looked at it in the past. And again, I'm a Louisville guy. I'm not trying to be disparaging towards Kentucky at all when I say this. But the one thing I will say about Mark Stoops, his team has always been extremely aggressive on the offense and the defensive lines. And one of those things, heart only wins you so many games in the SEC. When you got to block Igor and Thor on the DNs, there's only so much heart and willingness to win that you can show. Kentucky does that very well, though. And that's been missing. I mean, again, not trying to do the whole rivalry thing. The last time we saw Kentucky play, we lost them. We saw them get their absolute asses handed to them on the line of scrimmages by a mid-tier ACC school in their home stadium.
And they gave up in the first quarter. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
they were outmanned at just about every skill position, and it showed.
But I mean, I think it's going to be an early basketball season in Lexington. It always is, but basketball season it might come in September this year. That might be a new record, And I don't the whole Stoop situation. I don't know if he survives it. Obviously, if he makes a bowl game, he'll survive anything. But with everything going on with that program right now, if they win 3 games, which might I add is a very real possibility. It is a very, very real possibility. I don't know what happens there in Lexington. Truthfully, the issue for Lexington is I don't know where they pivot to. because don't kid yourself, this is a basketball fan base. They do not like investing large amounts of money into football. If you have to buy out Stoops and his staff, you're talking 49 million plus dollars. I know everyone in Lexington wants to say, "Oh, we're going to go out and get the guy from Tulane." Well, brother, everyone else in college football is also, and they're willing to pay him.
And don't sleep on Toledo week 1.
No, do not sleep on Toledo. But that's enough for Kentucky. Wish them the best of luck, but I think it's going to be a very rough year in Lexington.
Like,
All right, so now we're going to move up on the world. We're going to go up to the 15 slot. We're both in agreement again, Brad. We have Mississippi State. The one thing I'll say about Mississippi State, and this is a little disclaimer for this conversation, the program in Starksville is not in a good spot, but I want to reiterate it is no one at Mississippi State's fault for the state of the program. I mean, you had your Hall of Fame coach Mike Leach pass away in the middle of the off season. That is not something that you change in 2 or 3 years. It completely derails your program. So it's not Levy's fault. It's no one's fault over there for the state of the program, is what I would say.
and I like Jeff Levy. I hate that he lost Michael Van Buren because as bad as they were last year, that was one of the few bright spots. He was a stud freshman quarterback. That was a lot of fun to watch. And if you go watch some of their games, I mean, they didn't get blown out by Georgia on the road. I mean, it was probably one of the best games a quarterback had against Georgia last year was Michael Van Buren. So you lose him, but you bring back, your starter from last year who got hurt, I think week 1 or week 2. But still, too many question marks for that Mississippi State team. This could be one that they start 4-0. They have a pretty favorable schedule, especially if they can beat Arizona State early in the year at home. But once you look at that SEC schedule, the wins start to disappear. So I just don't see them really getting past 3 to 4 wins this year.
Well, the one way I look at it is, you go 2-10 last season, you lost pretty much all your production on offense. You're not the roster is in a better spot. Levy's building. I know it sucks to say, and people in Starksville are going to hate me saying it. Give him time. Just give the guy a little bit of time. You're not going to win 2 games again. You're going to win more than 2.
As crazy as it sounds, he's like honestly building a roster the old school way in the new school era. It's how he has to do it. And you and I both love Fluff Bothwell. He brought him in. Yep. Add some spark offensively. There could be some points out of Starkville this year, but from top to bottom, just not enough to get to the club.
Yeah. We'll move back on up though. We have Vanderbilt at 14. So here's my Vanderbilt. Here's my whole Vanderbilt spiel. They're not a bad team. I want you to say you look at 14 on this list. That's not a bad spot. Vanderbilt, they're building a football program there. You see Nashville is investing the resources into their NIL for the program. They are recruiting much better at the high school level than what Vanderbilt traditionally has done. And even with them being ranked 14th on this ranking, it's still probably one of the top 4 Vanderbilt rosters in the past 50 years.
Yeah. I mean, Clark Lee's done a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
The way and I'll give them credit for this. They were one of the first Power 4 schools to have a quote unquote GM for football. And it's taken time, but it has paid off. They haven't been extremely active in the portal, but they've brought in guys, looking for a year to play at the highest level. And it worked last year. I could honestly, even though we both have them at 14, I could see them at 6-6 once again back into a early December bowl game.
I could too, man. I mean, you look at it, Pavia, he's shown he's a legit SEC quarterback, even if he puts his foot in his mouth every once in a while, which has been an issue as of recently. His top target is his tight end Stowers. Stowers is the best tight end in the league. I know the SEC is a little bit down on tight ends, but he is by far and away the best tight end in the league. The defense last year was very solid, and they return a core of that group. They've added a little bit of depth into the secondary, into the portal, which was needed. And, if they can just kind of recreate a little bit of what they did last season, where, they slow you down on offense, they have these long, drawn-out possessions, they make the stops, that bend and don't break defense that they do so well. They're gonna sneak up on a few teams again.
And it's what worked. It's what has always worked at Vanderbilt.
Yep.
And they were successful. They're going to beat you with 1,000 cuts, and if you want to say it that way, and
Um,
that's how they did it last year. And Diego Pavia, I don't think Vanderbilt's ever going to run the state of Tennessee. But I will say, he is a dog at quarterback, and he is good enough to win you 6 or 7 games. I
yeah,
mean, he's that good.
yeah. But moving back on up to Arkansas, for Arkansas, man, the way I look at it, Sam Pittman, he silenced a lot of the criticism last season, but I don't think he silenced it enough. If they go on a run here and they get down in like that 3-4, which is very possible with the schedule that they have, there's gonna be a lot of people in Arkansas looking at that sideline and say, well, wait a second, why isn't that OC the head coach?
Yeah, and I we could see that at some point this year as an interim basis. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on Arkansas, but what I see is very similar to Kentucky. In where does your athletic department view your football program?
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of in that standstill
Yeah.
right now. It's just where do you go? And I give Bobby a lot of credit. I think Taylor Green's one of the most slept on quarterbacks in this league. He was so exciting at times last year. But I don't think it's enough. Could they get to 6? Maybe. But it's not going to be anything more than 6 or 7 wins out of Arkansas.
Yeah, so the big thing with Arkansas and Talon, man. So Talon Green is a really good quarterback for that Bobby Ball style of offense. The big issue is they're bringing in 5 wide receivers out of the portal. You got to think, and none of them are very big names, and that's not disparagingly either towards Arkansas. None of them are very big name wide receivers. One of those guys is going to have to step up to be Green's primary target. And then just their biggest issue last year, man, it's their ability to stop pass rushes. I mean, Green was running for his life last year. And don't get me wrong, Bobby Petrino, I can tell you firsthand, man, you got a bad offensive line, you got a mobile quarterback, he can make it work. But he
Yeah.
can only make it work for so long. And then they're shifting both their tackles inside to guard. They brought in 2 new tackles and along with a new center from the portal. We'll see if that works, but I doubt it. Again, those guys that they brought in, the tackles that they're shifting weren't very good to begin with, so now we're gonna have them play a more mobile position. And then the 2 tackles they're bringing in, they're not very highly talented. It's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. The defense, it's entirely new unit, with the exception of their 2 linebackers they're returning. There's a big rumor kind of going around right now that I've heard. Travis Williams, their defensive coordinator, apparently he wants to shift more of their defense like a base 3-3 package. I don't know if that's going to work though, because I just don't think they have the defensive line to do it. You know what I mean?
And that was their kryptonite last year. So, I mean, look at that Oklahoma State game last year. Well, they were up 3 scores early, and it just defense collapsed late. And I agree with you. I don't know if they have the dogs up front on the defense to get past that same 6 or 7 win mark. I just don't see
Yeah.
it.
But moving back on up, we'll go up to 12. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
Go for it.
All right, cool. So I got Auburn. The way I look at it is this is put up or shut up time for Hugh Freeze. There's so much money invested in that portal through NIL and donor support that expectations are raised a little bit higher. And especially when you look at the state of Alabama and you look at the state of the program over there in T-Town, it has a lot of people on the plains licking their lips. They brought in a really solid portal class this offseason. Jackson Arnold is the presumed starting quarterback. He has not been named officially, but I would bet a lot of money that he is. He wasn't that great in Oklahoma, in my honest to God opinion. Arnold, he got a really shiny toy in the portal, though. He got Eric Singleton Jr., and we've seen him enough in the ACC to know that kid is a dog from Georgia Tech. Auburn, they had a pretty good offensive line last year. They looked to have a pretty good offensive line this year. They're returning a lot of production. Defensively, they were decent last year. They'd look to be a little bit better. They're returning the bulk of their secondary, and they added Rayon Strader. He was, in my opinion, the best cornerback in the MAC last year. The pass rushing last season, it was a bright spot of the defense, in my opinion, and they're returning a bulk of that production. The only real question on the defense is going to be the linebacker room. They're losing majority of the production in that room, and they went to the portal to try to fix it. We'll see if those acquisitions pay off, but I mean, just the easiest way to put it is the pieces are there to win 6 games, to even potentially win 7 games. You got to do it.
And for Auburn too, you get Georgia and Alabama at home.
Yep.
You have to win one of those.
And you're dodging Texas, LSU, Florida, and Ole Miss.
Yeah, like you have one of the best breaks in the schedule in the whole conference, and if you don't win one of those, I think you're going to be sitting right at 7 wins.
Yeah, yeah. But let's hear let's hear a little bit about some Mizzou action.
They've been on that constant 8 to 10 win team the last few years, but I look at this team and quarterback's just a big question. And for Bo, he has to prove it. He hadn't been a Power Four starter yet, and in this league, it's a big step up. I do think they're going to make some noise early in the year, but when they get into that meat of the schedule, I don't think because we haven't seen it out of him, especially, I don't think that they are going to have the dogs to get those same wins they've gotten the last few years. And when I look at the teams above them, I think they have more proven quarterback play. And that's what it just kind of boils down to me. I could be totally wrong, but from what I know on June 30th, I don't think they're going to be better than Oklahoma. I don't think they're going to be better than Auburn, and I don't think they're going to be better than Florida.
Yeah. I guess we'll just move on up to 11. I'll give my little Missouri spiel, and it's extremely similar to you. It all comes down to quarterback play. Bo Pribula, he looked impressive in mop-up duties at Penn State. With that being said, there is a massive difference in going and playing against Maryland when you're up 35 points and playing against Alabama. There is a big difference in those two things. He's getting a really good target though out of the portal, man. They went and they got Kevin Coleman from Mississippi State. I think he was just shy of 1,000 last season, if I'm not mistaken. He's a great kid. He's a great player, man. Offensive line, it's a little unproven. It's just kind of those guys just filtering up. You kind of got to believe in your high school recruiting there. Defensively, last season, they were great. They were phenomenal on defense. And they're returning 7 starters from that unit. On top of that, they're adding Big 12 Freshman of the Year, Josiah Trotter. There's no questions with the defense. It was a top 20 unit last season. It's going to be a top 15 unit this year. The defense is going to be solid. It all comes down to quarterback. Again, Louisville Page, not trying to sound overtly homerish. If they would have gotten Miller Moss in the transfer portal instead of Louisville getting him, I legitimately think we're looking at Missouri as a preseason top 10 team.
Yep, I agree.
And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, you look at years past, you have plenty of teams that have talented rosters like Missouri does, but if you don't get the execution out of the quarterback play, you're not going to be very good. It's just the simple matter of fact.
Yep. But let's hear your spiel on Oklahoma.
So I love John Mateer. I think he was one of the best quarterbacks in the portal last year. Oklahoma was able to get him in a major upgrade from Jackson Arnold or Michael Hawkins. It's just John Mateer is one of those guys where you can pretty much put him in any offense and you're going to be much better. Last year, Oklahoma was in the mid 80s as far as offensive efficiency goes. It's just, especially in our lifetime, this is, I think, the first time in 15 years that they were outside the top 20 in offensive efficiency. And defensively last year, they were not bad at all. It was just their offense killed them time and time again. You're not going to see the mistakes from the quarterback position you saw out of Oklahoma last year. And granted, last year they had the injury bug at wide receiver. It was a major issue, which did lead to a lot of the quarterback issues. But also, they bring in Jaden Ott from from California. Dog of a running back. It's going to allow John Mateer to be that much better. But for me, it's more so, can Brent Venables get back to that 10-win coach that he had his final year in the Big 12?
Yep.
And if the defense can play at the same level in which they did last year, this was a top 40 defense last year. It's just the offense set them back time and time again. The wide receiver room, if they can stay healthy, and allow John Mateer to be a good quarterback like he was at Washington State, I mean, you could easily see this team making noise going into November. Like, it's just my biggest question mark with Oklahoma is, will we see the Brent Venables we saw 2 years ago, and not last year? It's just
Yeah.
that's the big question for me.
Yeah. So we'll move on up to 10 here. I'll go first. A little Texas A&M spiel. I'm going to be honest. My Texas A&M analysis, there's not much here to say. Texas A&M last year, first year under Elko, they were okay. I would say they were okay. They weren't great. They weren't bad. They were okay. They were in big ball games when they had to be in. Uh, Marcel Reed is the truth. Marcel Reed's and he's getting better. He is progressing as a quarterback. You look at that as well. They're bringing in Casey Concepcion into the from the transfer portal. He's a dog. I don't got to tell another ACC program fan about that. He's an absolute dog. They're bringing in Mario Craver as well, another great kid. Running back room looks to be really solid. They're bringing back Le'Veon Moss, who's a pretty good back, but also this is all full circle with the Louisville stuff. Who's going to see a lot more play this year?
Ruben Owens.
Ruben Owens. You got a former 5-star kid that's going to be backing up. He's going to see more of a role. He's coming off an injury, though, which is a little iffy sometimes, especially when it's a lower body injury like that. They're returning the bulk of their production on their offensive line. It was not a terrible offensive line unit last year. I believe the only guy they're not returning is their center. The big question mark, though, is going to be the defense. The defense last year was not good. It was not good at all. With that being said, though, you're returning 8 guys off of your defense. One would think that you are going to get a little bit better with that, especially with what you added through in the portal. Now, for Texas A&M, it's a hard schedule. You're playing Notre Dame and you're out of conference, for God's sakes. I mean, you're adding another college football playoff team to an already stacked conference schedule. If you can get to 6 wins, if you can get to 7 wins, you're going to be a good ball team. I think also when you start to look at this from the 10 line up on our rankings, that's when you start seeing preseason top 25 teams. With all that being said, yes, this team is ranked 10th. If this team goes 7-5, 8-4, it is inherently better than a Baylor that goes 7-5, 8-4. I just want to point that out.
And a team like A&M, if they can get to that 9-win mark, they're going to be in that 13.
They'll be in the college football playoff.
Yeah, they're going to be right there in that bubble talk. I mean, it's just the margin of error for them is pretty thin, I think. But especially if you can get a big non-conference win against Notre Dame on the road, like that would speak volumes.
Well, and also with A&M, yes, you do play Texas. You don't have to play Georgia. I'm double checking here. You don't have to play Florida. I mean, like you're really going up against LSU and Texas in the top of the conference. Granted, you're playing the middle of the conference, which the middle of the conference is not bad football teams. Just want to point that the middle of the conference, this is not like the Big 12. When you're playing the middle of the conference, you're still playing top 25 teams. But the possibility is there where you look at it and say, well, if we get lucky 1 or 2 times, or if Marcel Reed is as good as people think he is, this could be a college football playoff team.
If Ruben Owens can come back healthy, like
Yeah.
that adds that another dynamic out of the running game. And he had a great freshman year 2 years ago before he was injured last year. So
Yep.
it's he has proven he can be a very good SEC running back. And if you put him with Moss, you get the legs with Marcel Reed, like that could be a really fun offense.
Well, and it's like the thing that we're seeing with Elko here at Texas A&M. He's not doing the old style Texas A&M thing where, hey, we got a top 50 player, let's throw the kid $700,000. They're actually scouting players now. A crazy concept.
Right?
But let's hear your Auburn talk, man. Let's talk about what's going on in the Plains.
I didn't love the Jackson Arnold. I mean, I didn't love that. I mean, just because to me Jackson he was a high profile kid out of high school, and it's just been kind of average. I mean, considering all the hype he got out of high school, going to Oklahoma, he thought he was going to be the next big thing, and I don't know. I don't love the mix from what we've seen out of him so far, but I do love Cam Coleman. I think he's one of the most slept on wide receivers in the league. I think Auburn, may have one of the best wide receiver rooms in the SEC this year. That's just,
It's a very fair argument to be
and
made.
give Hugh Freeze credit. He had great wide receiver rooms at Ole Miss. He's starting to build that room at Auburn, and if you can get enough out of Jackson Arnold, I think they are going to be good enough to make some noise. Defensively, we'll see. But I think the big thing for Auburn, and the reason I have them at 10 now, and similar as I've said with Florida, you have to go prove it this year. And until we see it out of the quarterback position, Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss had great quarterbacks. He has yet to have a great quarterback at Auburn. Last year Peyton Thorne, I don't know what that was, but that was not.
It was not good football, is what it
No, it was
was. It
not.
was not good football.
It was not. And I may sit here in October and say I was completely wrong about Jackson Arnold, but until I see it, I'm not going to put much faith in Auburn yet.
I get that. So we're gonna move on up. Gonna go on up to 9. I'll go say my little spiel about Oklahoma since you've already done yours. The first thing I want to point out here with Oklahoma, my God, do they have a difficult schedule?
They do.
They have a difficult schedule, man. Week 2, they're playing Michigan. That's a game that's gonna mean a lot for everyone in the SEC and the Big Ten. Then they are, Red River Shootout, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Missouri, LSU, all in a row. That is a murderer's row. Venables, he's in a very difficult situation this year. The buy-in is there, and the results have not been there. They loaded the NIL cannon in the portal. You already mentioned it. They brought in Mateer. I think he's probably him, Mendoza, Moss, and probably Beck are the top 4 guys out of the portal in that quarterback room. I don't know the exact on 3 ratings or whatever, but that's personally what I would go with was 04. Mateer, he is a dog. They brought in Jalen Ott from Cal. That's Otttogo. Maybe it's Ott to go. If you've never seen that, look it up. The Cal burner verse is great. Pretty good offensive line. They're returning majority of those guys. The only guy they're bringing in is a left tackle and a right tackle. And I believe one of those is a transfer. The other guy's moving up in the program. Defensively, they're returning a lot of production. The defense wasn't all that great last season. One would think that it would get better. They are losing a lot of guys to graduation, though, is something to keep an eye on. And they're important positions, primarily at their linebacker core. It's a all new group of guys. Man, you got a difficult schedule here. You got some weapons on the offense, but you got a difficult schedule. I think it's a good team, man. It's one of those things where it's that prototypical SEC conundrum that we have. You have a really good team that realistically has 8 preseason top 25 teams on their schedule. You're gonna win some of those, you're gonna lose some of those, and I don't think I see them winning 7 games. I honestly do. I can't see them. I can't envision them. That stretch, man, of Texas, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Missouri, LSU. I don't see you winning a lot of games in that stretch, maybe 2 or 3. And then you look at your out of conference, you got a Michigan in there, man. Yeah, of course, you're going to beat the Illinois States and the Temples and the Kent States of the world. You're going to beat their brains out. But, man, you add in Michigan to that mix, that's a difficult schedule, brother. That's difficult.
But just do us all a favor and beat Michigan. Just beat
Yeah,
Michigan.
it makes everything so much easier. It makes it so much easier. But let's hear your Florida talk, man. Pretty big discrepancy for us, by the way. That's the first one I've kind of noticed.
So
That Texas
you
A&M.
are higher on them than I am. We will both agree DJ Lagway is a very good quarterback. But my thing with Florida is when I look at Billy Napier and his time at Florida, he has 10 double-digit losses as the head coach at Florida. It, and it's just the level of inconsistency in games.
It's week to week inconsistent also, which is the issue.
And that's why I don't trust Billy Napier. I will give him credit. He's had some great recruiting classes the last couple of years. He's got a great quarterback. But, when I look at, the early season struggles last year, by September, any real hope for them was gone by the end of September. And you're going to have a very similar, look at this year. If you got Miami early again, if you don't lose to Miami, if you don't beat Miami, sorry, Then you still have Georgia in October, a game you have not won since 2020. You, of course, we mentioned it. You have Tennessee in November. Like, you just have to set the tone early.
Mhm.
And with me, it makes the SEC a lot better when Florida is really good.
Yeah.
But I'm not putting much stock in Billy Napier. The inconsistency is just too much for me to overcome at this point.
We have not done our ACC preview yet on the page. I want to point this out, but what I will say in a little preview, I am nowhere near as high on Miami as I am other people are. Florida should win that game, and here's the thing: also with that game, there's gonna be more Florida fans there than there are Miami fans.
Oh yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, it's gonna be, we always see it happen, especially with the Florida State Miami games. I mean, it that's just the environment Miami is. I mean, they have 17,000 season ticket holders for a reason. But yeah, it's gonna be hard to gauge. It's gonna be hard to gauge. Moving on up again though, I believe we're on number 8 right now. We're samesies. We got Tennessee. You want to give me your Tennessee talk first?
I love Josh Heupel. I
Yep.
think he's one of the best. Has one of the best minds in the as far as coaches in the conference. He's definitely overachieved in his time in Knoxville. He proved that last year. And I think once again, he's improving. They're as a team, they're improving defensively. They were really, really good there last year. I think they're going to be really good again on that side of the ball. As we mentioned earlier, though, comes down to Joey Aguilar. If he is indeed their starting quarterback, is he good enough to win? And here. When I look at their schedule, it really comes down to, the Georgia game, the Florida game, and the Alabama game. And if you just win the games that you're supposed to outside of those three, worst case scenario there, you go 9-3. You steal one of those, you are in the college football playoff. And you
You're
did the
right,
same thing
right
last year.
back where yeah, right back where you were at.
Yep, you did the same thing last year with average quarterback play. Nico was average.
Yeah,
And I think you can get the same thing out of Joey. Um, so there. I mean, but then again, it is a major step up. Joey was really good at App State. Heupel is good enough to develop him, I think, to get to that point. But we just got to see it. Do not sleep on Syracuse week 1. Do not sleep on Syracuse because there in no world should you lose that game. But if you come out and you sleepwalk through the first half of that game, Syracuse is good enough to beat you. And if you
yep.
lose to Syracuse week 1, you can forget the college football playoff.
It's not happening. The one big question mark for Tennessee outside of the quarterback room that I'd like to point out is the wide receiver room. Tennessee has been recruiting under Heupel with their hair on fire. They've recruited very, very well. You look at this wide receiver room, you are projected to start Mike Matthews, sophomore, who played sparingly last year, and a true freshman in Braylon Staley. In that room also, you have three more true freshmen that are going to see realistic time. This is a very young wide receiver room. We don't exactly fully know what you're getting out of this wide receiver room, but it is a very highly talented wide receiver room going based off of high school rankings. It could be what saves them. It could also be what kills them. So you got to really trust that high school recruiting this year, especially in that room, and you got to give Aguilar as much rope as he needs to either save himself or hang himself.
And look at what Tennessee's done under Heupel. They've pretty much hung their hat on the running game.
Yep.
Dylan Sampson last year, he's in the NFL now, but he led the country in rushing touchdowns. Like, in my opinion, he should have been in New York for the Heisman. He was that good.
Yes.
Can you get that same level of consistency out of the running game to help with the inconsistency at wide receiver and quarterback? Because if you do that, you're going to be able to lean on your defense a little bit more. And if you can consistently run the ball, I think you're going to be able to hide some of your deficiencies in the passing game.
Well, something funny also, that running back room is 200 classmen.
Exactly. I mean,
So you got to trust it. You got to
exactly.
trust it.
And under Heupel, that running game has been the staple. And if you can get enough, there, it's going to open up your passing game enough.
Yeah. But we'll move it on up. We got some South Carolina talk. I'm going to let you take the reins on this one. This is your topic to talk about.
So Lenore Sellers, stud. And he's had a great offseason from everything you read. He was really good in the running game last year. And this year though, he's going to have to step up in the passing game. Early on last year, they really kept getting in their own way. He got hurt in that LSU game early in the year, and he did not play the majority of that game, especially in the second half. And especially when he wasn't out there, the passing game was non-existent. And even when he was out there at times, the passing game last year was just very inconsistent. Look at the bowl game against Illinois, which he played in. It was not the Lenore Stellars we saw against Clemson. It was not the Lenore Stellars we saw against Texas A&M last year. At the end of the year. So for him, if he can continue to get better in the passing game, the legs will be there. The offensive line should be pretty good again. Um, there is going to be some question marks with the running back room. It's a lot of from young faces there. They're still waiting on the NCAA to clear a transfer that came in from Utah State, Fiazon. There's no telling what's going to happen there because if he doesn't get cleared by the NCAA, they're going to be looking at a redshirt sophomore as their starting running back, who has not played a lot of football yet.
Okay.
Defensively, again, they're going to be really good. They got the best defensive end probably in the country. But as I mentioned earlier, with Beamer, special teams wins games, and you know, much like his dad and much like Urban Meyer, two of the best minds when it comes to special teams in my lifetime. South Carolina is starting over from square one when it comes to special teams. Their special teams coordinator took the job at University of Buffalo. They'll have a new kicker and a new punter. Last year, so the punter, I believe he ended up getting drafted. But he had one of the highest passing completion percentages in the country last year. I think he was like 6 of 7 passing, and that was their punter. If that goes to tell you. So, and I think 4 of those were for touchdowns.
It's
Two of them,
just normal South Carolina things.
yeah, like 4 of them were for touchdowns, I believe, and 2 of them got called back because of penalties. Just saying, like it adds another element. With South Carolina, the schedule very similar to last year, but some of those games you won at home last year are going to be on the road. You got Ole Miss on the road, who blew you out at home last year. You have to go back to A&M. You have to go to LSU. Those are games that historically you have not won there. So the history is not on your side. I look at this team today and I see a 7-win football team.
Yep.
But this is a team that could very easily once again go 9-3.
So the one thing I will say that is nice for South Carolina, you do have your question marks like you hit on, especially on the defense and the special teams and in the running game. Have you seen their schedule?
It's brutal, man. I mean,
It's brutal, but listen to this. You go Virginia Tech, South Carolina State, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Kentucky. You can win all those games and get things right before you go into your LSU, Oklahoma, Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Coastal Carolina, Clemson. You have time to get right there. You got your first 6 games of the season where you're going to be favored in every single one of those games. You can get right, and then you're looking at a 6-0 South Carolina going into LSU to Death Valley on October 11th, when I'm willing to bet old LSU will also be 6-0 also, or 5-0. You know what I mean? I mean, it works out to where if you can win that LSU game, man, and you get to 7-0 and you're staring down Oklahoma, Alabama, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and Clemson and Coastal Carolina, man, you can make some noise. You could do it.
and this is one of those things where usually the Kentucky game is where the Missouri game is this year on the schedule. And in the last few years with South Carolina, it was you had to beat Kentucky. You had to get that game back. They were finally able to beat Eli Drinkwitz in Missouri last year in South Carolina. You said it. If you can go on the road and beat Missouri, you should be 5-0. I mean, you should start 5-0.
Yep.
Now, I will say this, and it has been a trend with Shane Beamer at South Carolina. Week one has been horrendous,
Yep.
and absolutely horrendous. His first year, they got a break against Illinois State or whoever it was. It was one of those games. But after that,
Directional
yeah,
university. Yeah.
after that, it has not been pretty week one. A couple years ago, they gave up, I think, 11 sacks to North Carolina and Charlotte. They almost lost to Old Dominion at home to
Mm-hmm.
start the year
Yep.
last year. Uh, don't It's similar to what I said with Tennessee and Syracuse. Don't sleep on Virginia Tech.
See, I disagree with you on that one.
And
I'm
here's the
sleeping
thing.
like a baby on Virginia Tech, man.
But here's the thing. I look at a prime example there. Their bowl game last year against Illinois, they had no business losing that game. It should not have even been
Well,
close.
there was also a lot of extracurriculars in that game that I think.
There was. But when you have Lenore Sellers on the field, you just don't lose to Illinois.
Yeah.
And again, week one with Shane Beamer at South Carolina has not been pretty. Every year it has been a consistency. So that's my one thing. Beat Virginia Tech, go on the road, take care of Missouri. You're going to be a top 10 team going into Baton Rouge.
Well said. Let's move it on up in the world. Number 6. I got Ole Miss. I got the Rebs. Man, I got the Rebs. Weird off season for the Lane Train in Oxford. We've always thought of Kiffin being this like the portal guy. We always thought of Kiffin and Brom and Dion as the portal guys. Those three guys were active in the portal this year, but nothing like we've ever seen from them. It was delayed. And you look at Ole Miss, man. They've been recruiting. They've been recruiting at the high school ranks. You got a lot of questions marks. You got a lot of question marks on this roster. Mainly, I would argue it's going to be the quarterback position. And you're it's just going to be rough with Simmons, man. I don't trust Simmons. I know you think he's the truth. I personally don't trust it that much. It's very unproven for me. I also look at their wide receiver room. They're returning one guy. They're returning nobody on the offensive line. They are returning nobody in the running back room. I look at their defense. They are returning two guys. Now, I know that we always, the portal talk, we all, either you love it or you hate it. The way that I've seen them build this roster, though, this is the first time where I don't really trust it. But here's the great news for Ole Miss. Have you seen their schedule?
Cakewalk.
It is a complete cakewalk. They could sleepwalk their way to 10 games if Simmons is halfway decent. This is going to be one of those teams, man. I could see Ole Miss winning 10 games, and I could see them making the college football playoff and getting completely blown out week one. Or in the first round. I could see them just getting their teeth kicked in by somebody like Notre Dame in that first round game. And that's not me trying to sound shitty to Ole Miss either. I think it's still a top 25 roster, but it's probably closer to 25 than it is to 1. And it's just you got very fortunate with your schedule, man. I mean, I look at your schedule. Your biggest game, you're hosting LSU. You're at Georgia. Other than that, I mean, your hardest game is at Georgia. I look at it and I say you're playing the bottom half of the conference with the exception of Georgia, LSU, and South Carolina.
And South
Man,
Carolina and LSU are at home. So,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I think they could. I really do think they could sleepwalk their way to 10 wins, very easily. And if Simmons is halfway decent, they could win 11 games. They could.
And I'll say this. I give all the credit to Washington State for agreeing to go to Oxford and playing that game. Hats off to Washington State because they didn't have to agree to that game, and they did. So
You know who
it's
it
going
could
to
have
bring
been?
some West Coast flair to Oxford, Mississippi, and it's going to be
We could have, they could have had a much more interesting schedule, especially cross conference that week.
Yeah, they could have had a game in Nashville, Tennessee, to be,
Yeah,
for example, but
yeah,
they
that would have
chose
been crazy.
Washington State. So,
Yeah, that could have been crazy. So tell me a little bit about your Texas A&M. Tell me a little bit about Elko.
so I love Marcel Reed. Um, I remember their game against uh, Florida last year on the road, and when they had LSU at home. He continuously stepped up and made plays. We talked earlier about the running back room with Moss and Reuben Owens. Very good running back room. Elko, he's always going to have a good defense. And I wonder if they can take that next step. Their schedule though, this is obviously becoming a trend. Their schedule is we're not in the same category as Ole Miss. So they've got a little bit of a tougher schedule there. But when I look at Marcel Reed, similar to how I look at Lenore Sellers, if he can make that next step, I think A&M's got the playmakers around him for them to take that next step. And, that's a team with their schedule. If they can get to 9 wins, they're going to be right there on that playoff talk. But, for me, last year especially, they got off to the wrong foot. But then they got off to what, 6-1, 7-1. I think they won
Uh-huh.
6 or 7
Yeah.
straight after losing to Notre Dame.
Start firing them off.
And a lot of that came down to Marcel Reed. So, with A&M, for me, go on the road and beat Notre Dame, make a statement, prove you can go do it. Because if they can, that's a team that I could easily see winning 9, maybe even 10. But end of the year, you're going to go on the road to Texas. You're going to be probably a touchdown dog in that game. So you have to make up some ground before you get there, obviously. But Marcel Reed, I mean, he's one of the few returning quarterbacks in the conference that I don't think people are talking about enough. I
Uh-huh.
mean, he just go back and watch the Florida game last year. Go watch
Yeah,
the LSU game last year. Like the kid can play.
he can.
And that's why I have them at 6.
So before we move on up to 5, at least in my rankings, when I get to this 1 to 5, these are teams that I would say probably have a plus 75% chance to make the college football playoff. Like these are the legitimate. These are the guys competing for the conference, in my opinion. I'll start off with Bama, then I'll let you do the Ole Miss talk. For Alabama, it is such of an interesting time in T-Town. It really is. Even after Coach Saban left, expectations never left. You're still Alabama. Now, Kalen DeBoer, he's a hell of a head coach. He's won everywhere he's went. He's a very quality coach, but there's been a drop off, and I don't mean that meanly, but there has been a drop off. Granted, he's only had 1 season, but you look at it, especially for recruiting. I mean, I've seen Alabama get 2 3-star commits in the past month. That ain't normal. They're returning quite a bit this year. They're returning a really solid offensive line. In my opinion, they have one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country. I genuinely think that. And their younger guys also, might I add. They're also returning a very quality veteran running back. That brings the question, what is the major issue with Alabama? And it's the same issue as last year. It's quarterback. Jalen Milroe did just as much harm as he did good last year. And I don't mean that shittily. But every step forward was 2 steps back. You look at it this season, you got 3 guys you're going to go with. You're either going to go with Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, or you got true freshman 5-star Keelan Russell. I personally think they go with Simpson. There is talk coming out of spring though that Mack is impressing a lot of people. What's really interesting about all those guys is they are all highly mobile quarterbacks. The defense last year, they were good. They were good. They were top 20 unit. They're returning 75% plus of that production. It's a good unit. What's ultimately going to decide how the season goes is the same thing that decided last year: the quarterback play. You got to figure out who it is, and you got to figure out quick. DeBoer, there's no one. No one is. It is impossible to replace Nick Saban unless you are the living embodiment of Bear Bryant, the guy that Saban passed up. It ain't happening. For him, man, he's got to make the college football playoff. There's way too much money invested in that program. There's way too much prestige that's happened over the past few years. It's been a dynasty. Don't be the guy that lets the dynasty die. You know what I mean?
And they were a loss to Vanderbilt away last year from making the
They,
college football
they will. They were.
playoff. So,
They were. I
um,
mean, if Vandy, man, and it's one of those things. If you miss it again this year, people are gonna get angsty, and it's not fair to DeBoer, but people are, man. The state of Alabama is the college football capital of the world. You have to make the college football playoff, especially when they expanded the damn thing after you were so dominant in the 4 year span in the four team era. You got to make it, and you got to make the right decision in the quarterback room. You got to do it. That's the best way to put it. You got to figure it out, man. You got to. Don't let the dynasty die.
Let me ask you this: when it comes to Alabama, say they go 10-2, but their two losses are blowout losses in Athens and a loss to Auburn on the road. What is the mindset with that fan base?
It's not good, man, because you haven't beaten anybody quality.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, you're gonna go into Doak. You're gonna beat the brains out of Florida State. Like you're gonna beat the brains out of Castellanos. I mean, you host Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a fine program, but it's Wisconsin. You are Alabama, for God's sakes. Outside of that, you'd win at Georgia, which I'm sorry to tell you, Kalen DeBoer, that is the expectation. That is the expectation. Beat them in the regular season. And outside of that, you're going to beat Tennessee, and again, Kalen, the expectation is to beat Tennessee. It's one of those things, man. It would not be a lot of good wins, and especially if you lose to Auburn with the state of the program. Like if you cannot lose to Auburn, you just cannot do it.
And that's the thing is the three games that most Alabama fans will tell you they care about the most is when they get Georgia in the regular season, is on the road. LSU's on the road, and Auburn's on the road. I mean, if you go 9-3, and those are your three losses, it doesn't matter if you win every other game 56-0. It's just that's how you're going to be graded.
The one game I will point out here, you cannot, under any circumstances, lose to Vanderbilt again. Like that can't happen. That cannot happen at all. And here's the thing: they're both very similar rosters to what they were last year. Vanderbilt could very easily. Vanderbilt, they're at 14 on this list, man. They're still a damn good ball team at 14. And we said that in the Vanderbilt talk. Vanderbilt could do the same thing they did to your ass last year. And it's just one of those things, man. You took the job at Alabama. There are expectations that you must meet. And those expectations are beating very good teams in the regular season.
And that's the thing, man. I'm glad you brought it up. That Vanderbilt game is sandwiched between a trip to Athens and a trip to Columbia, Missouri. Early kickoff in Tuscaloosa also. That game has already been announced. Actually, sorry, that kickoff has not been announced. But it will more than likely be the 11 a.m. Tuscaloosa kick. So don't sleepwalk.
And here is the hard part of the conversation right now with Alabama. You look at this roster. Who are your primary guys on this roster that are starting for you? It's all Saban guys. Now I get, man, you've had 1 year. You don't build high school depth in 1 year. But Alabama's had every single opportunity to get into the portal, and they do at times. But the state of the quarterback room, yeah, you got a 5-star, man. We see it every single year. One of these SEC teams tries to trot out a 5-star, and it does not work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it don't. Most time it don't. Just the state of the quarterback room is just not. Ty Simpson, he's a great kid, man. I've heard nothing but great things about Ty Simpson, but is it achievable in this league? I don't think it is. Like I said, I think Alabama, they're another team. They can sleepwalk their way to 9 wins. They're not going to beat anybody quality, but they could do it.
I mean, is Ty Simpson the next A.J. McCarron or Greg McElroy? Like, is he that next guy that can come in and...
No. In my opinion, no. And by the way, whoever at EA Sports thinks this is the best team in the country, you don't watch college football. It's a good roster. It's a great roster, but it's not. I mean, I'm looking at my number 1 team on my list right now. It's not that.
Ryan Williams is good, but he's not that good.
Yeah.
So,
but tell me something about Ole Miss.
We just kind of talked about it a minute ago, but I know they have a lot of question marks. I am a big Austin Simmons guy. I do love Lane Kiffin. But the schedule, dude, like you hit the nail on the head. Their toughest games are at home. LSU's at home. Florida's at home. Yes, you have to go to Athens. Yes, you have to go to Oklahoma. You're probably still going to be better than Oklahoma. Even if you go on the road and you drop a game to Oklahoma, you lose to Oklahoma, you lose to Georgia. The rest of those games on their schedule, you're probably going to be favored. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
You might be a slight dog to LSU at home, but you're going to be favored against South Carolina. Based on what we know now, you'll probably be favored against Florida at home. You're going to beat the brakes off Mississippi State. Your non-conference schedule is a joke. Like it all comes down to what you mentioned. Well, can the defense? They have a lot of new faces. Can they come together and be a good unit offensively? Who are you going to throw the ball to? You have some question marks there. But for me, ultimately, it comes down to trusting Lane Kiffin. Every year, his offense is one of the best in the conference. And again, I just think people are sleeping on Austin Simmons. I think the kid is a future star in this league, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are going to see that this year.
Moving on up in the world, number 4, I got my Gators. By my Gators, you said a lot. You said a lot. Billy kind of saved his job last year, but Billy is one of those coaches where you got some expectations, brother. You don't meet those expectations. I look at their offense. They're bringing back DJ Lagway. I think DJ Lagway is one of the best young quarterbacks in the country. I think he's an absolute star in the making. Just has to stay healthy. I look at their offensive line. They're returning every single starter on their offensive line except for right tackle, which they brought in Bryce Lovett, a hell of a right tackle as well. Again, I looked at the wide receiver room. It's a young wide receiver room, but they have recruited wide receivers extremely well. I look at the defense. They're returning quite a bit of production on defense. My big issue, though, I think, well, first off, let me keep fluffing them up. They got talent. They got the talent to do it. They have a dynamic offense. They have one of the better offenses in the league, in my opinion. It's going to be the week to week stuff. This is a team where I look at this schedule and, you're playing two nobodies to open up the season. I didn't even know Long Island had a football team, to be completely honest. Then you have a 3-game stretch of at LSU, at Miami, and Texas. If you can find a way to win 2 of those games, you're going to the college football playoff. I mean, unless you lose to Kentucky or something. That stretch right there, those 3-game stretch, that's what's going to define what this team is. Me personally, I think this team beats Miami. Honestly, I think they beat Miami by multiple touchdowns. And I could see them, a Texas at home. That's a game where Florida's going to be in that game, man. They're going to be in that game. You turn around, the rest of your schedule, you play at Georgia, and you're hosting Tennessee, at Ole Miss, and you're hosting Florida State. I mean, it's a manageable schedule, and it is a schedule where it is difficult enough to where if you win 9 games, I think you can justify being in the college football playoff with this schedule. It's a really good mix there. I look at what they're bringing on the offense. I love it. The defense, I feel okay enough with. I don't feel great about, but I feel fine with. It's just go out there, man, score 35 points a game and see what happens.
And Lagway can do that.
He
Like
can.
he can get you there. Um,
Also, I think Lagway is a serious Heisman contender. Just want to add that.
love it, spicy. Um,
I got one of them.
Alabama, what you kind of hit on a minute ago. I mean, it really just comes down to quarterback play. The schedule is pretty favorable for them. They're going to have the talent to win at minimum, I think, 9 games. Just comes down to those big 3. If you can just again get one of those big 3, you're sitting at 10-2, and you're in the college football playoff. I don't really see this Alabama team, and unless Ty Simpson or someone else in that quarterback room is spectacular and we don't know it yet. I don't see much more there. I don't see this team winning the SEC. I do see this team as a potential, at-large team in the playoff, but past that, I don't really see much. But that just, for me, kind of takes me to my top 3. And we have the same top 3, just in different orders.
It's pretty damn similar. So, yeah, I definitely, again, when I keep looking at this list, I said the top 5 are realistic college football playoff contenders. The top 3 are teams I expect to be in the college football playoff. And I think that's fair to say. All 3 teams, they have the talent, they have the coaching, 2 of them maybe. Uh,
Yeah.
But these are teams that they should be in the college football playoff, like 100%. If these three teams don't make, I would say also the expectation from these fan bases is also to make the college football playoff. If any one of these three teams didn't make the CFP, I think it would be looked at as a disappointment by their prospective fan bases.
If even if I'd say one of these three don't make the college football playoff, I think the SEC is in for a very rude awakening this year. Um,
Oh, we're saving that for after this. We're saving that talk. Yeah, there's two ways that goes.
yeah.
Uh, you wanted to get us started with three with Texas.
Yeah. For Texas, again, defensively, I think they're going to be really good. Um, but it's Arch. I think he has all the tools to be really, really good. You know, Sark is one of the best offensive minds in the game. But for me, the two games the reason I have them at three is you mentioned it earlier, but the Ohio State game. I worry in that game if Sark's gonna get out coached again. In the
Uh-huh.
biggest games last year, especially against Kirby at home, Kirby in the SEC championship, he got out coached. Ryan Day is a very good coach, and if Sark were to get out coached once again, which when I look at the two rosters, I think I give Texas the slight edge over Ohio State. But it's no easy task to go in there and win. So when I look at this this power ranking for the SEC, um, I have Georgia a notch over Texas simply because it comes down to coaching, and Kirby Smart is a better coach than Sarkisian. But for me, I have LSU simply because I think when you look at with Nussmeier coming back, you look at what LSU brings back on the defensive side of the ball. This has to be the year. Like they've missed it the last 2 years, and I think a lot of that falls on Brian Kelly. But LSU doesn't have Georgia in the regular season.
Yep,
Um, I don't think they. I'm not sure if they. I don't think they play Texas either.
they do not.
Um, exactly. So two of your best teams in the conference you avoid. Now, with LSU, they've had every opportunity the last 2 years to take advantage of that, and they have fallen flat on their face time and time again, but not this year. Every media outlet out there has refused to give Garrett Nussmeier the credit at quarterback, and I'm all in on LSU. This is the year. They will go into Clemson, South Carolina week one. They will end the week one curse. They will get off to a 1-0 start, and it'll be sunshine and rainbows in Baton Rouge after week one for the first time in, I believe, 5 years. I do not think they have won.
What years is it? 2025.
Yeah, they lost to Florida State both years,
Yep.
and the year with Coach O, they lost. I forget who they lost to, but
Yeah.
it was I think the COVID year. They lost to somebody. I think maybe Mississippi State, somebody like
Uh,
that week one.
yeah. It was.
It
Yeah.
was bad. So they have.
Uh,
I mean, they haven't. But with Brian Kelly this year, I'm giving him the credit. I think this year he finally gets it turned around. He's got uh, every opportunity to do so. I think he has one of the best quarterbacks in the country back. The defense this year is going to be much improved, and they do return a lot. They return probably the best linebacker in the country as well. So, I mean, I'm all in on LSU, and the reason I have them over Georgia and Texas is simply because of the experience at quarterback. Um, no discredit Arch. I think he's going to be awesome. But when I look at Garrett Nussmeier, he is a better quarterback than Arch Manning, and he is a better quarterback than Gunnar Stockton. And give me the LSU Tigers as the number one team in the conference here on June 30th.
so for me, I'll start at the bottom, work my way up. A lot of what you said about LSU, I actually agree with. I think LSU is one of the more competently built rosters. I look at their schedule. It's a very manageable schedule. Obviously you play at Clemson week 1. That doesn't really count towards your conference. It doesn't count towards your conference record. It doesn't really count in the context of this video. You're at Florida, or you host Florida, at Ole Miss, host South Carolina, at Vandy, host Texas A&M, at Alabama, hosting Arkansas, and at Oklahoma. Like you pointed out, Garrett Nussmeier, he's a hell of a quarterback, man. He's a good quarterback. You look at the running back room is pretty solid. You bring back Aaron Anderson of the wideouts. He's a hell of a pass catcher. Offensive line is a little bit of a question mark in my opinion. They're only returning 1 starter. Defense, it's going to be fine. I mean, you got Harold Perkins back there. It's going to be fine. They got all the tools. The only thing that worries me is the coaching. Brian Kelly has consistently underachieved at everywhere he's been. And I know that might be, a little, oh, that's hot, that's spicy. It's not really. Look at the Notre Dame years. The Notre Dame years were they nationally relevant? Yeah. Could they hold a candle to anybody else? No. I've seen Brian Kelly get outcoached so many times. I don't think they're going to beat Clemson week 1. I don't. I think they have a better roster than Clemson. That game being in the real Death Valley, might I add. I don't see it, especially, and that's more about Clemson. I think Clemson is one of the better teams in the country, and Dabo is one of the best active coaches in college football. But then you look at the conference slate is very manageable. I think they're going to lose one of South Carolina or Texas A&M, if you want my honest opinion. I think those are 2 really good coaches. I think those are 2 very competently built rosters that could go one-on-one with LSU. And then I don't know if 6-2 gets you there in this league. I don't know if it does. 7-1, 8-0, that gets you there. I don't know about 6-2. So that's my big holdup with LSU. And then my big question for LSU comes into play is, well, let's say if you lose at Clemson and you drop a game to let's say a South Carolina, and your best win is 1 game at Alabama, and that's your only real quality win outside of at Alabama, at Ole Miss. 2 quality wins, 2 quality losses, 8 whatever games. Does that get you into the college football playoff? And that's a whole nother conversation. But that's my whole holdup. It is 100% a Brian Kelly issue. Then I move on up to Georgia, to my dogs. I will continue to pick Georgia to make it to Atlanta as long as Kirby Smart is the head coach there. Kirby Smart, Georgia as a program, they've been down the past 2 years, even though they've won 20 plus games. It's still the best program in the country from a recruiting standpoint, from a development standpoint, from an on-the-field coaching standpoint. Their biggest issue has been quarterback play. Carson Beck wasn't it. I don't know if Gunnar Stockton is it either. I mean, there's a lot of really good reports coming out about him, but from what we saw last year as a sophomore, it wasn't great. It was serviceable, but to make it to Atlanta, you have to be great. I think he could do it this year. I look at their schedule, man. Obviously they're at Tennessee, hosting Alabama, hosting Kentucky, at Auburn, hosting Ole Miss, at Florida, at Mississippi State, hosting Texas, and then they have it's Georgia, and I know this is it's bad video, or it's bad to talk about it like this way. Until Kirby Smart gives me a reason not to trust him, I'm not going to stop trusting him.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. We're going to know a lot about Gunnar Stockton come October 1st. Again, Tennessee and Alabama, both into the month of September. If Gunnar can take Georgia into Neyland, because Neyland will be rocking that Saturday afternoon. If Gunnar can take them into Neyland and get the win, you're going to see the outlook on Georgia shift in a completely different light than, I think a lot of people are looking at them now, because nationally that is the question. And if Gunnar Stockton goes into Knoxville and they leave with the win, you're going to see a lot of the money pour in on Georgia early in the year.
Yeah, and I can't stress it enough. When Kirby Smart has a bad roster, he finds ways to win. The biggest question marks for Georgia is going to be their secondary play and their quarterback play. Well, guess what? You know how many 5-star kids they brought in the secondary in the past 3 years?
How many?
5 secondary 5. You're going to hit on one of those guys. The recruiting rankings, they're not always right when it comes to those kids. They're right 95% of the time. And then moving on up in the world, I got Texas as my SEC champion. Quite simply put, Texas, I think it's the best roster in college football. I truly do. I look at Texas. You're retaining a hell of a lot of production, and I mean, it's the Arch Manning thing. It is the Arch Manning conundrum that Texas has found itself in. They were able to kind of navigate that PR storm with Ewers the past. Okay, what was it? Yeah, last year they were able to navigate that storm. Um, I look at what they are bringing in the wide receiver room. I think it's one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country, if you want my honest opinion. Between Wingo, DeAndre Moore, and Emmett Mosley, I mean that is a group of absolute dogs. Look at their offensive line. They're only returning one guy off the offensive line. The other guys, they're just top 300 level players. Yeah, whatever.
Um,
Tight end. They brought in Jack Injuries from Cal. He was a spring portal addition. He was one of the best guys in the spring portal. He was a dog last year at Cal. I look at the defense. The defense is returning a hell of a lot of production. They got younger guys on their defensive line, and they do more of a rotational base on their defensive line. I look at their schedule. Obviously, they're going up to the Horseshoe. That's gonna be a tough game, but it doesn't matter in the context of this video. Uh, then they're at Florida. They're Red River Shootout at Kentucky, at Mississippi State, hosting Vanderbilt, at Georgia, hosting Arkansas, hosting Texas A&M. I look at that and I say, okay, cool. Well, my conference slate, we're gonna beat Florida. We're gonna beat the brains out of Oklahoma. We're probably gonna have our backup quarterback Trey Owens in Kentucky in the second quarter. Mississippi State, same thing. Vanderbilt, you shouldn't have any problems with. At Georgia, I mean, that's one conference game that I'm worried about. And here's the great thing with at Georgia. That game's on November 15th. You know when the SEC championship is?
2 weeks later or 3 weeks
2 weeks
later.
later.
Yeah.
Or yeah, three weeks later.
Yeah.
3 weeks later, we're gonna play them again. I could see them, dropping a game to Georgia in the regular season and then turning right around and beating them. I have full confidence in Sark. He has built a hell of a roster. Those boosters have spent a hell of a lot of money, might I add, as well. It's one of those things, and this is one of those statements that's gonna make me like put my foot in my mouth because like 3 months from now, or I guess 6 months from now, someone will clip this, and I look like an idiot, but it's too big to fail. What they have built is just it's too big to fail unless there is just a colossal string of injuries or something along the lines. It's not going to fail. So give me Texas, and I think there's a good chance Texas could be your number one overall seed going into the college football playoff as well.
And the last 2 years they've had the national championship right on the grasp of their fingertips. Like it's
Yeah,
been right there. They had the SEC championship right there. Like Texas has been so close to being back. And
yeah,
it just they're I think when you look at their roster, when I told you this before the show, like one of my hot takes was I think Texas goes into Athens this year and wins in the regular season. But will they play Georgia again or will it be LSU? And here's the thing: if it is, they better hope it's not Georgia again because
yeah,
Kirby's not losing to Texas twice.
yeah, and that's where it gets dicey for them. But that's
But
gonna round us
but
up
yeah,
for
I
our
mean,
rankings. Okay, that's gonna round us up for our rankings. Last little point of conversation, then we're gonna get out of here. I know this is gonna be a longer video than usual, but we're talking about arguably the best conference in the country. How many teams do you think the SEC sends to the college football?
I'm gonna stick with four. Um, but I will say this: I think this will be the first year where there is a full blown discussion of an 8-4 team, uh, like having a serious discussion of an 8-4 team getting into the playoff.
Okay.
Um, I just look at Florida for example. The schedule is brutal, but if they were to go 8-4, I don't know how you can honestly sit there and not have a discussion of Florida, not being in the college football playoff. You know, Same with in some ways Texas A&M. That's another one where if A&M wins 9, they've got to be in.
Yeah.
But if they're sitting there at 8-4, you're probably going to have that discussion. Um, but I'll just stay with four. I mean, I still think it's Texas. I think it's Georgia. You're going to have Alabama. Um, And for that fourth team, I think it's LSU. I mean, I just think this is the year Brian Kelly gets over that hump. They get to that 10-win mark, and with LSU, that's the other thing. If they go 9-3, and one of those 9 wins is Clemson on the road, and Clemson wins the ACC, I don't know how you can leave LSU out of the discussion.
So it's an interesting question for me to try to answer. I look at my power rankings here, and I get Texas, Georgia, LSU. I think the expectation is for those three teams to make it. Then I look a little bit lower. I had Florida, Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Tennessee. I think one of those teams could make it. I don't know if it's quite the expectation on a national scale. Maybe on their individual fan base it is, but I mean, that's whatever. My biggest issue being, and I hit it up. It was one of the. If you've been watching this long in this video, you heard me say it earlier. The talent is still in the SEC. The talent is not widespread like it used to be. The SEC as a conference has been on a downslope. There is not a Nick Saban led Alabama anymore. Now, there's a Steve Sarkisian Texas was pretty good, but it ain't no Alabama. You still got Kirby, Georgia. He's doing his thing. Outside of that, I look at this league and I say, that's a little
Yeah.
very good coaches,
Yeah.
but not that level. I think the SEC is going to lose a couple of games here in the early season. I really do. I already hit on it. I could see Texas losing to Ohio State, and I think Texas has one of the best rosters in the country. I think LSU is going to lose to Clemson. And if you start losing some of those matchups, you even take a game like a Missouri versus a Kansas, and Missouri drops that, brother, that's not going to work. Especially when I compare, you're always going to compare the SEC to the Big Ten in modern college football. I look at the Big Ten this year. I got Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon that are legitimately three of the best teams in the country. Like, they are all legitimately top seven good. I don't quite have that in the SEC. Do I have a lot of teams in the SEC that are top 25 good? Yeah, I probably have about nine, I would argue. Probably nine, maybe 10. It is a lot of, it's running into that Big 12 issue where it's, hey, we're really good, but we keep beating up on each other and we keep losing our out of conference games. I could see that happening this year, man. I think you could see a backslide from the SEC this year, and for a multitude of reasons. And one of them that I want to hit on that no one really is talking about in a national media sense. The ACC is getting better,
Yes, it is.
and the ACC is getting better very quickly. That gap is shortening, and it's shortening quicker than anybody else wants to realize. You could realistically see two ACC teams going again and having a third one making a very good argument. I think Clemson is probably the second, third best team in the country. Miami, they're Miami. That's okay. SMU, they're not taking a step back. This is a Louisville page, not trying to do the Louisville homer thing. Man, Louisville wins 10 games with their schedule. You gotta put them in. And it's the same, I mean, the SOR would be there. These ACC teams, they used to play mid 50s SORs every single season. That number's going up, man. They're playing SORs into the 40s, into the 30s. I think you could make, if things go a certain way, you could have the opportunity where it's only three SEC teams or two SEC teams. And that is a situation that the SEC does not want to realize. I think that is a situation where if that were to happen, where the SEC only got two teams in the college football playoff, college football would change. And not even trying to sound funny, like it would change.
Immediately.
So I don't know. I lean more towards three teams. I really think it's going to be Texas, Georgia, LSU. I want to really believe it's LSU. I don't trust Brian Kelly. I could see a team like a Florida, maybe an Alabama, maybe an Ole Miss. But it is a very volatile and important year for the league because you're going to be 2 years removed from Saban. New teams are going to kind of stake their claim, and Kirby is Kirby, but man, if Kirby doesn't get the quarterback situation figured out, I mean, you're looking at a bleak. The talent is there, but if the talent does not win out of conference, it cannot justify itself. Talent itself is not a justification. I don't know. This league, they have to have a good out of conference slate. The crux of we are the SEC is not going to work with the state of the Big 12 and the state of the ACC.
And I look at going back to the 3 or 4 team discussion here. We talked a lot about schedules. I'm going to give you an example. You have Ole Miss, say they go 10-2, but one of their losses is at home to Florida. Florida goes 9-3. You have a 9-3 Florida team or a 10-2 Ole Miss team. They're both not getting in.
No.
You give it to Florida. Like that's the thing is I think when you look at the SEC this year, I think you can always say whoever gets to Atlanta is a lock to make the college football playoff. But this could be one of those years where teams 3, 4, and 5 where they have a serious discussion.
Well, and it's something also to hit on, and it's kind of partial to that ACC Big Ten talk. Man, there's a realistic possibility that an 11-1 SMU happens again, and they miss Charlotte.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
that, the way those schedules work out. I mean, God forbid, let's say you have that situation with Ole Miss and who you said Ole Miss in Florida.
yeah,
You got an 11-1 SMU that missed out on Charlotte. You got I don't know, a 10-1 or a 10-2 Louisville that goes to Charlotte, and a 12-0 Clemson. I mean, what do you do with that situation?
if you're the SEC, you do not want more than two ACC teams win more than 10 games. Because if,
No.
if they win more than 10 games, if you have that same scenario, Clemson 12-0 or 11-1, SMU 11-1, Louisville 10-2.
Well,
Good
and then
luck.
to add on to it, the way that the Big Ten scheduling works every year, and this isn't me trying to take shots at Indiana, there will always be an Indiana in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a team that's going to dodge Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State, and it's going to win 10 games, and it's going to play nobody of note. This year, that team is Maryland, by the way. I don't know if you know that. They play no one of worth or wild. Now, granted, Maryland doesn't have a very good roster, but I mean, you're gonna have that team in the Big Ten. You'll have your Ohio State. You're gonna have your Oregon. Again, another big news flash here, and this is kind of the issue with the 12-team playoff. I know I'm very much rambling here. Boise's probably going to win 11 games. There's a very good chance James Madison wins 11 games, and there's a good chance Tulane wins 10 plus games. You get to that point where there's not enough slots here to justify you having 4 teams, unless you can really prove it. I just, if you're the SEC, man, you have to win those out of conference games. You absolutely have to. And luckily for the SEC, they got 2 shots at Clemson. They got 1 shot at Miami. They got 1 shot at Florida State, and they got 1 shot at Louisville. They gotta win those games. They have to win them.
That'd be those are your must wins. You got Florida at Miami, must win. Baylor or Auburn at Baylor, I think is a must win for the conference. South Carolina, Virginia Tech, Tennessee, Syracuse. Those are just must win games. Missouri and Kansas, must win game for Missouri. Um, you know, Alabama's going to beat Florida State. They're going to beat Wisconsin. I'm not really worried about that. But those neutral site games early, like if you want to have that argument for that fourth, maybe even fifth team, you have to take care of business out of conference. And here's the thing: is like give all these ads credit for agreeing to do the home and homes. Home and homes deserve to be done in college football. Get rid of neutral site games. They are so pointless in my opinion. Play the home and homes. Credit to Clemson and LSU. Credit to Florida State, Alabama. We need more home and homes every single year.
Well, and that's the thing.
Game.
I'm never going to complain about the SEC and the ACC specifically. I'm never going to complain about these 2 leagues playing these out of conference games because yes, it will screw over one conference that will help the other, but it is much better to do that than to play non-conference games and then play nobody like other conferences do.
Yeah.
Because then the Big Ten, it all goes back. That Indiana situation, it's going to happen every year. Every single year it's going to happen. Oh, and also, when I was talking about my college football playoff scenarios, I didn't even mention Notre Dame. I mean,
the days of playing 3 cupcakes, in my opinion, should be over. Like, especially, if you're a school, prime example, look at a school like Missouri, for instance. You don't really have that SEC history. So why go out and play 3 cupcakes every year when you could play Kansas? It's nothing special, but play Kansas, play Illinois, bring those rivalries back. In the years you do have a good roster and a weaker SEC schedule, and you do go 9-3 or 10-2, you're pretty much guaranteed a spot in the playoff.
Yeah.
Like it's just
yeah.
a 9-3 team with a non-conference win over a Power 4 school is more appealing than a 10-2 with 3 games over UMass. Sam Houston and Old Dominion. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah, but longer than usual video. Thank you so much, Brad, for coming on tonight. I know it was kind of a long video. It's a fun conversation, though. I think this is our speed of a conversation. uh, I prefer talking about this than talking about a game against Eastern Kentucky.
Hey, but we are now, after 12, 59 days away from week one, and 52 days from week zero. So the countdown is here. I mean, by the end of this week, we'll be about 48 days away from college football being on TV. And, we're going to be back at this weekly, breaking it all down. The SEC football talk is a year-long discussion where Josh and I are from. And so anytime we have the opportunity to do it, we will gladly talk ball.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, again, for the viewers, thank you so much for watching it. And please like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Your help greatly helps out the page with the page growth. That is our number one priority here, along with providing excellent content. If you have not seen our preview series, it's going to continue on throughout the week. We have the ACC preview coming up. That's going to be a solo show by myself. Then we have our Big Ten preview coming up. That'll be with Maxwell. Sorry, G5s. You're not getting a preview show. If you want to check out our Big 12 preview and you have not yet seen it, it's going to be linked at the end of this video. Please check it out. And thank you so much, and have a great day. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.
See you next time.
Brad, thank you so much, brother.